The year was 2347, and humanity had finally reached the stars. After 2 centuries of space travel, they had found what they always dreamed of finding. They were not alone. The galaxy was full of life, full of ancient civilizations that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, before humans even learned to make fire. The Galactic Council ruled over the Orion arm of the galaxy. 12 alien species sat on this council, and they had kept peace for over 50,000 years. They were proud of their history. They were proud of their laws, and they looked at humanity the way a grown man looks at a baby learning to walk. Humans were new. Humans were primitive. Humans were tolerated, but never respected. Earth sent its first ambassador to the Council homeworld of Vareth Prime. His name was Daniel Porter, a calm and patient man who believed that peace could be built through understanding. He brought his family with him to this strange new world. He brought his wife, his son, and his 12-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily Porter was a bright child with curious eyes and a smile that could warm any room. She loved to learn. She loved to explore. While her father sat in long meetings with alien diplomats, Lily would wander the halls of the embassy and try to talk to anyone who would listen. She learned bits and pieces of alien languages. She made friends with the children of other species, even when their parents told them to stay away from the human girl. The embassy staff loved her. The guards smiled when she walked past. Even some of the alien servants who worked in the human quarters grew fond of her. She had a way of making everyone feel like they mattered. Her father worried about her sometimes. Vareth Prime was not a safe place for humans. The council species did not trust outsiders, and the oldest among them, the Vorthani, considered humans to be little more than clever animals. Daniel warned his daughter to be careful. He told her not to wander too far. He told her that not everyone in the galaxy was kind. But Lily was 12 years old, and 12-year-olds do not always listen. One warm afternoon, while her father was stuck in another endless meeting, Lily slipped away from her escort. She had heard stories about a beautiful garden on the far side of the diplomatic district. The Vorthani kept it, and they said it was the most beautiful place on all of Vareth Prime. Lily wanted to see it. She wanted to see something beautiful. She found a way through a side gate that someone had left unlocked. The garden was everything she had imagined and more. Strange flowers in colors she had never seen grew in perfect rows. Trees with silver leaves reached toward the purple sky. The air smelled sweet, like honey and rain. Lily walked slowly through the paths, her eyes wide with wonder. She had never seen anything so lovely in her entire life. She stopped in front of a bush covered in glowing blue flowers. They were small, no bigger than her thumb, but they shone like tiny stars. She reached out and picked one, just one, to bring back and show her father. She did not know that those flowers were sacred to the Vorthani. She did not know that each bloom was considered a gift from their ancient gods. She did not know that touching them was forbidden, and that taking one was a crime punishable by death. A shadow fell over her. Lily looked up and saw a tall figure in flowing robes. It was a Vorthani, ancient and thin, with pale skin and eyes like black glass. His name was Zelkoth, and he was the high priest of the Vorthani people. He had tended this garden for over 300 years. He looked at the flower in her hand. He looked at her small, frightened face, and his expression showed no mercy. Guards came within minutes. Lily was taken away in chains that were too big for her wrists. She cried out for her father. She did not understand what she had done wrong. She kept saying she was sorry, over and over. But no one listened. Ambassador Daniel Porter learned what happened an hour later. He ran through the halls of the council building, pushing past alien diplomats and guards. He burst into the chamber where the council was meeting and fell to his knees before the 12 leaders of the galaxy. He begged, he pleaded, he offered everything he had. He said he would give his own life if they would spare his daughter. He explained that she was just a child, that she did not know, that she meant no harm. The council listened. They discussed. They voted. The vote was unanimous. The ancient law was clear. Desecration of the sacred garden was punishable by death. There were no exceptions. Not for children. Not for ignorance. Not for tears. They gave Daniel 1 hour to say goodbye. He held his daughter in a cold stone cell. She was so small in his arms. She asked him what was happening. She asked him why everyone was so angry. He could not find the words. He just held her and cried. The execution took place on the steps of the Grand Chamber, in front of delegates from every species in the council. It was meant to be a lesson. It was meant to show the galaxy that law was law, that the Vorthani traditions would not bend for anyone, especially not for primitive humans. Lily was brought out in chains. Her mother had to be held back by guards. Her father stood frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. His little girl looked at him with confusion in her eyes. Her last words were a question, spoken in a voice so soft that only those closest could hear. "Daddy, why are they angry?" The blade fell. Across the galaxy, humans watched on their screens. They watched a 12-year-old girl die for picking a flower. They watched alien faces show no emotion, no regret, no shame. They watched as her small body was carried away like garbage. Something changed in humanity that day. Something old and deep and terrible woke up inside them. It was the same thing that had driven them to survive ice ages and plagues and wars. It was the thing that made them dangerous. It was love, twisted into rage. It was grief, hardened into steel. The council did not understand what they had done. They thought they had taught humanity a lesson about obedience and law. They thought the matter was closed. They were wrong. On Earth, in a billion homes, in a billion hearts, a single thought began to form. It spread like fire through dry grass. It united enemies. It silenced arguments. It brought together every human who had ever lived under the same sky. That thought was simple. They killed our child. And they will pay for it. For 3 days after Lily Porter died, Earth said nothing. The council waited for a response. They expected crying and begging. They expected formal complaints filed through proper channels. They expected humans to accept their place in the galaxy, the way every other young species had done before them. Some council members even thought humans might apologize for the girl's crime, but there was only silence. On Earth, something strange was happening. Old enemies stopped fighting. Countries that had argued for centuries suddenly went quiet. News channels showed the same footage, over and over again. A little girl in chains, a blade in the sunlight, a father screaming her name. People watched in their homes, in their offices, in their schools. They watched, and they remembered. The governments of Earth began to talk to each other. Not the usual careful diplomatic conversations. This was different. This was fast and direct and cold. Within hours, a meeting was called. Every leader of every nation was asked to come to Geneva. To a secure bunker, buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps. Admiral Nathan Cole received the call at midnight. He was the commander of Earth's Stellar Defense Fleet, a small force of ships that patrolled human space. He had spent his whole career building that fleet from nothing. He had fought pirates and raiders and small alien threats. But he had never been called to a meeting like this. When he arrived at the bunker, he found the most powerful people on Earth waiting in a single room. Presidents and prime ministers, generals and admirals, scientists and spies. They sat in silence, watching a holographic image that floated above the central table. It was Lily Porter's face. Smiling. Innocent. Gone. President Laura Bennett stood at the head of the table. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had led Earth through difficult times before, but Cole had never seen her look like this. Her face was stone. Her voice was ice. "We all know why we are here," she said. "We all saw what they did. The question is simple. What do we do now?" What do we do now? The room was quiet for a long moment. Then, one by one, the leaders began to speak. They spoke of anger. They spoke of justice. They spoke of things that humans had not spoken of in centuries. There were no arguments, no debates. No one suggested that they should accept this. No one suggested that they should forgive. For the first time in all of human history, Every nation agreed on something. The vote was unanimous. 2 days later, the Council's ambassador to Earth requested a meeting. His name was Sarath, a Vorthani diplomat who had lived among humans for 5 years. He thought he understood them. He thought he knew how they would react. He expected tears and desperate bargaining. He was made to wait for 6 hours in a cold, empty room. When President Bennett finally arrived, she did not sit down. She stood in the doorway and looked at him with empty eyes. 2 armed guards stood behind her. "You killed a child," she said. "Our child," Sarath tried to explain. He spoke of law and tradition. He spoke of the sacred flowers and the ancient customs of his people. He spoke of the need for order in a chaotic galaxy. He spoke for 10 minutes without stopping. President Bennett listened. When he finished, she raised one hand. "Leave our world," she said. "All of you. Every alien. Every ship. Every probe. Every piece of your technology. You have 72 hours. Sarath stared at her. "You cannot be serious. The Council has treaties with Earth. Trade agreements. Defense pacts. You cannot simply—" 72 hours, Bennett repeated. "After that, any alien presence in human space will be considered an act of war." She turned and walked out of the room. The guards followed her. Sarath was left alone in the cold and the silence. Within hours, the order went out. All human citizens living in Council space were told to come home immediately. Ships were sent to pick them up. Trade agreements were ended. Communication channels were shut down. Scientists working on joint projects packed their bags and left without saying goodbye. Ambassador Daniel Porter was the last to leave Varath Prime. He walked through the halls of the embassy he had built, past the rooms where his daughter had played, past the garden where she had smiled at alien flowers. He carried nothing with him except a small box containing her ashes. No one tried to stop him. No one said a word. Back on Earth, the real work began. In secret facilities around the world, scientists received new orders. Money was no longer a problem. Resources were no longer a problem. Every nation contributed everything they had. Factories that had made consumer goods began making ship parts. Universities that had taught students began training soldiers. The entire economy of Earth shifted in a single week. The Council had spies on Earth, of course. They tried to watch what was happening. But human intelligence services had been preparing for this day for a long time. The spies were found. Some were sent home, others simply disappeared. Within a month, the Council had no eyes on Earth at all. Admiral Cole was given command of a project called Black Dawn. He was told to build a fleet. Not the small defense force he had commanded before. A real fleet. A fleet that could challenge the Council itself. He was given unlimited resources and one order: work fast. Deep in the asteroid belt, construction began on shipyards that had never existed in any official record. Thousands of workers lived in secret stations, building something that the galaxy had never seen. The work went on day and night, week after week, month after month. On Earth, people changed. The old divisions faded away. Countries that had hated each other for generations now worked side by side. Young people signed up for military service in numbers not seen since the ancient world wars. Old people gave their savings to the war fund. Children drew pictures of Lily Porter and hung them in their windows. No one talked about what was coming. No one needed to. Everyone knew. The Council noticed the silence. Some of them began to worry. A few suggested that perhaps they should reach out to humanity, offer some gesture of peace. But the Vorthani refused. They had done nothing wrong. The law was the law. If humans could not accept that, it was their problem. "They are children," Zelkoth said when asked about the human reaction. "They will cry for a while, and then they will forget. That is what children do." He could not have been more wrong. In the darkness between the stars, humanity was not crying. Humanity was building. Humanity was planning. Humanity was sharpening its claws and counting the days. The Council had killed a little girl for picking a flower. They thought that made them strong. They thought that made them powerful. They did not understand that they had made a terrible mistake. They had woken something old, something patient, something that would not forgive and would not forget. The storm was coming, and when it arrived, it would burn everything in its path. 18 months passed after the death of Lily Porter, and the Council grew comfortable again. Their spies could no longer see what was happening on Earth, but their analysts were confident. Humans were a young species. They had only been traveling among the stars for 200 years. They had small ships, weak weapons, and limited resources. Even if they wanted revenge, what could they possibly do? The Council had fleets that numbered in the hundreds of thousands. They had weapons that could crack planets in half. They had 50,000 years of experience in war. Humans were nothing. Humans were insects. Humans would learn their place, or they would be crushed. On Vareth Prime, High Priest Zelkoth continued his daily routines. He tended his sacred garden. He performed his ancient rituals. Sometimes he thought about the human girl and felt nothing at all. She had broken the law. She had paid the price. That was justice. But far away, hidden in the darkness of the asteroid belt, something was being born. Admiral Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of a ship that did not officially exist. It was called the Nemesis, and it was the first of its kind, 2 kilometers long, armed with weapons that human scientists had invented in the last 18 months, powered by engines that could cross the galaxy in days instead of weeks. It was beautiful. It was terrifying, and it was not alone. The shipyards had been working without rest. 10,000 ships now floated in the darkness, waiting for orders. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, dreadnoughts. Each one was painted black, with no markings, no flags, no names written on their hulls. They were ghosts, built for one purpose only. Cole looked out at his fleet and felt something he had not felt in a long time. Pride. Not the small pride of a job well done. This was something bigger. This was the pride of a species that had decided to stand up and fight. The technology had come faster than anyone expected. When humans worked together, when they stopped fighting each other, and focused on a single goal, they could do amazing things. In 18 months, they had made discoveries that should have taken centuries. Dr. Kevin Shaw was a quantum physicist from a small university in Ohio. Before Lily Porter died, he had been working on theories that his colleagues called impossible. After she died, he received a call from the government. Unlimited funding. Unlimited resources. One question. Could he make ships appear anywhere in the galaxy, instantly? 14 months later, he had his answer. He called it dimensional folding. The ships did not travel through space. They folded space around themselves, stepping from one point to another like a man stepping through a door. No warning. No detection. The enemy would not see them coming until they were already there. Commander Megan Cross was a ship designer who had spent her career being told that her ideas were too aggressive, too dangerous, too extreme. After Lily Porter died, those same ideas were exactly what humanity needed. She designed the Revenant-class dreadnought, a ship built around a single massive weapon called the Sunbreaker. In tests, it had cut through Vorthani shield technology like it was made of paper. Every scientist, every engineer, every brilliant mind on Earth contributed something. They shared their secrets freely. They worked together without jealousy or competition. The death of one little girl had done what thousands of years of philosophy could not. It had united humanity completely, but the ships and weapons were only part of the answer. Wars were not won by machines alone. They were won by the people who operated them. Corporal Ryan Ellis was 23 years old. He had joined the military 2 years ago, thinking he would spend his career patrolling quiet sectors and never seeing real combat. Then Lily Porter died, and everything changed. He was assigned to the newly formed Terran Vengeance Corps, an elite unit trained for one mission: planetary assault. For 18 months, he trained harder than he had ever trained in his life. He learned to fight in zero gravity. He learned to use weapons that had not existed a year ago. He learned to hate. One evening, he visited Lily Porter's memorial in Washington. It was a simple thing, just a bronze statue of a little girl holding a flower. Thousands of people came every day to leave gifts and say prayers. Ryan stood before it for a long time, looking at her frozen smile. She had been his age once. 12 years old, curious about the universe, excited to see new things. She had picked a flower because it was beautiful, and they had killed her for it. "We're coming for them," he whispered to the statue. "All of them, I promise." Across human space, 10 million soldiers made the same promise. They trained in secret bases on Mars and Europa and Titan. They memorized the layouts of alien cities. They studied the weaknesses of Council species. They prepared for a war that would shake the galaxy. Admiral Cole received regular reports on the fleet's progress. 10,000 ships, 2 million crew members, weapons that could break worlds, soldiers who would die before they retreated. It was enough. It was more than enough. But Cole wanted to be certain. He called a meeting of his senior officers in the war room of the Nemesis. Holographic maps of Council space filled the air around them. 12 homeworlds, hundreds of colony planets, millions of ships. "We attack all 12 homeworlds at the same time," Cole said. "No warning, no mercy. We fold in, destroy their orbital defenses, and land ground troops within the first hour. Speed and surprise are everything. If we give them time to organize, they might be able to hold us off. We cannot give them that time." Commander Cross nodded. "The Sunbreakers can handle their orbital stations. Once those are down, their planets are defenseless." "What about civilians?" someone asked. Cole was quiet for a moment. "We are not monsters. We do not kill children. We do not bomb cities. But their military forces, their government buildings, their seats of power, those are legitimate targets. We take them all." The officers looked at each other. They understood what this meant. They were not just planning a war. They were planning the complete destruction of a galactic order that had existed for 50,000 years. "One more thing," Cole said. "Zel-Koth, the priest who ordered her death. I want him alive. He does not get to die quickly. He gets to watch everything he built burn to the ground. That is his punishment." No one objected. The final preparations took another month. Ships were loaded with supplies. Soldiers said goodbye to their families. Coordinates were programmed into fold drives. Everything was ready. On the eve of the attack, Admiral Cole broadcast a message to every ship in the fleet. His face appeared on screens across human space. He looked tired but determined. "Tomorrow, we go to war," he said. "Not for land. Not for resources. Not for power. We go to war because they murdered a child who only wanted to see something beautiful. We go to war because the galaxy needs to learn that humanity protects its own. We go to war because Lily Porter deserves justice, and we are the only ones who will give it to her." He paused. "When we are done, they will never forget us. They will tell stories about this day for 1,000 generations. They will warn their children about what happens when you hurt one of ours. Let us give them something to remember." The fleet moved into position. 10,000 ships, 10 million souls. One purpose. The storm was about to break. At exactly midnight, Galactic Standard Time, the Black Armada folded into existence above 12 worlds at the same moment. There was no warning. 1 second, the skies above the Council homeworlds were peaceful. The next second, they were filled with 10,000 black ships that had appeared from nowhere. Alarms began to scream on every planet. Military commanders shouted orders that no one could follow. Chaos spread like wildfire. Admiral Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of the Nemesis above Verath Prime, the heart of Council power. The planet filled his view screen. Beautiful and proud, and completely unprepared. Around him, his crew worked in focused silence. They had trained for this moment for 18 months. They were ready. "All ships, begin attack," Cole said calmly. "Show them what we brought." The Sunbreakers fired. Beams of pure white energy lanced down from the human dreadnoughts, each one powerful enough to cut through a moon. The Council's orbital defense stations, which had protected these worlds for thousands of years, exploded in seconds. Debris rained down through the atmosphere like falling stars. The shields that the Council had believed were unbreakable shattered like glass. On the planet's surface, the Vorthani looked up at their burning sky and finally understood their mistake. The Council fleets tried to respond. Ships launched from hidden bases, fighters scrambled from carriers, commanders screamed for reinforcements. But the human attack was too fast, too coordinated, too overwhelming. Before the Council could organize any real defense, half their ships were already destroyed. The battle for Vareth Prime lasted 6 hours. 6 hours to break a civilization that had ruled for 50,000 years. Human marines landed in drop pods that fell from the sky like metal rain. They hit the ground running, moving through the streets of the capital city with terrible efficiency. They did not hurt civilians. They did not burn homes. But they crushed every soldier, every guard, every armed resistance they found. Corporal Ryan Ellis was among the first wave. He fought through the streets with his squad, moving toward the grand chamber where Lily Porter had died. Enemy soldiers fell before them. Some tried to surrender. They were taken prisoner. Some tried to fight. They were killed. Ryan felt nothing. He had trained himself to feel nothing until the job was done. Across the galaxy, the same story repeated on 11 other worlds. The Council species, proud and ancient and certain of their power, crumbled before the human assault. Some fought bravely. Some fled. Some surrendered within hours. It did not matter. The result was always the same. The Kethrani, warriors who had never lost a war in 10,000 years, lasted 3 days before their last fleet was destroyed. The Valdori, masters of defensive technology, held out for 5 days before their shields finally fell. The Zephani, who had once conquered half the galaxy, surrendered after their emperor watched his palace burn. One by one, the Council species fell. On Vareth Prime, Commander Megan Cross led the assault on the government district. She had designed the ships that made this victory possible. Now, she wanted to see it through to the end. Her troops moved through the ancient halls of power, past statues of Vorthani heroes, past paintings that celebrated 50,000 years of civilization. They found the grand chamber empty. The Council members had fled or hidden. But Cross did not care about politicians. She cared about one thing only. She walked to the spot where Lily Porter had died. The marble floor was stained with old blood that the Vorthani had never bothered to clean. They had been proud of that stain. They had shown it to visitors as proof of their commitment to law and order. Cross knelt down and pulled a small earth flag from her pocket. She planted it in a crack in the marble, right in the center of the bloodstain. "For Lily," she said quietly. "We came for you, sweetheart. We came." The war lasted 11 days. 11 days to break an empire that had stood for longer than human civilization had existed. When it was over, every Council homeworld was under human control. Every Council fleet was destroyed or captured. Every Council government had surrendered. But there was one piece of business left unfinished. High Priest Zelkoth was found hiding in a secret chamber beneath his sacred garden. Special Forces soldiers dragged him out into the light, his ancient robes torn, his proud face twisted with fear. He had lived for over 300 years. He had never known defeat. He had never known what it felt like to be powerless. Now he knew. They brought him to Admiral Cole aboard the Nemesis. The old priest was forced to his knees on the bridge, surrounded by human officers who looked at him with cold hatred. Cole stood before him, hands clasped behind his back. "You remember her," Cole said. It was not a question. Zelkoth's voice shook. "The girl. Yes, I remember. She broke the law. The law demanded that you murder a child for picking a flower." Cole's voice was flat. "Your law. Your tradition. Your choice. I was following the sacred texts. The ancient ways. You cannot blame me for. I can blame you for whatever I want," Cole interrupted. "You ordered her death. You watched her die. You felt nothing." Zelkoth tried to speak, but no words came. "I could kill you right now," Cole continued. I could give you to her father, who has been waiting 18 months for this moment. I could let my soldiers tear you apart, piece by piece. You deserve all of that and more. The priest's eyes widened with terror. But I am not going to kill you. Cole leaned closer. Death is too easy. Too fast. You do not get to escape what you did. Instead, you are going to live. You are going to watch everything you built fall apart. You are going to see your people humbled and your traditions forgotten. And every day, for the rest of your very long life, you are going to remember that little girl's face and know that you are the reason your civilization ended. Zelkoth began to weep. Ancient tears ran down his alien face. Take him away, Cole ordered. He has work to do. Corporal Ryan Ellis spent the last day of the war in the sacred garden where it all began. The flowers still glowed blue in the fading light. The silver trees still reached toward the sky. It was beautiful, just as Lily had thought. He did not destroy it. That would have been easy, but it would not have been right. Lily had loved this garden. She had died for wanting to touch a piece of its beauty. Instead, Ryan knelt in the soft earth and planted a single seed. It was a dandelion seed, brought all the way from Earth, a simple weed that grew anywhere, that could not be stopped, that spread no matter how hard you tried to kill it. Grow, he whispered to the seed. Grow everywhere. Take over this whole garden. Let them remember that humans were here. He stood up, looked around one last time, and walked away. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. The Galactic Council died on the 11th day of the war, but something new rose to take its place. Humanity did not come to the stars as conquerors. They did not want empires, or slaves, or endless power. They wanted justice. And once they had it, they wanted something better. Something that would make sure no child ever died for picking a flower again. President Laura Bennett announced the formation of the Terran Accord 3 weeks after the war ended. It would be a new coalition, built on different principles. Every species would have a voice, no matter how young or how old. Laws would be fair and clear, not hidden behind ancient traditions that only served the powerful. Justice would mean the same thing for everyone, from the smallest child to the mightiest priest. The Council species had no choice but to accept. Their fleets were gone. Their governments had surrendered. Human soldiers patrolled their streets, and human ships orbited their worlds, but humanity did not treat them the way they had treated others. There were no executions, no mass punishments, no revenge killings. The war was over, and humans were ready to move forward. Not everyone understood this. On some worlds, the old rulers tried to resist. They called for uprisings against the human occupiers. They promised to restore the glory of the Council, but their own people did not listen. Ordinary citizens, who had lived under the Council's rigid laws for generations, discovered that humans were not the monsters they had been told about. Human soldiers shared food with hungry families. Human doctors treated the sick and wounded. Human engineers helped rebuild what the war had destroyed. Slowly, trust began to grow. Admiral Nathan Cole was offered many honors after the war. Medals, titles, statues in his likeness. He refused them all. He had done what he was asked to do, and now, he wanted peace. He retired to a small farm in Montana, far from cities and crowds and the endless demands of fame. He kept one thing from the war: a picture of Lily Porter that someone had given him. He put it on his mantle, where he could see it every day. Sometimes visitors would come to his farm, reporters or historians who wanted to hear his story. He always turned them away. "I am not a hero," he would say. "I was just a man who did a job." The real hero was a little girl who picked a flower because she thought it was pretty. Write about her instead. Commander Megan Cross stayed in the military. Someone had to keep the peace, and she was good at it. She traveled from world to world, helping to train new security forces made up of both humans and aliens. She made friends with former enemies. She learned their languages and their customs, and she never forgot why she had fought. On every world she visited, she made sure there was a memorial for Lily Porter. Nothing grand, just a small plaque with her name and her picture. She only wanted to see something beautiful. Each plaque read, it became a symbol throughout the galaxy, a reminder of what could happen when powerful beings forgot to be kind. Corporal Ryan Ellis left the military after the war. He had seen enough fighting for one lifetime. He went back to school, studied education, and became a teacher. He taught history to children on a colony world far from Earth, in a classroom where human kids sat next to Vorthani kids, and Kethrani kids, and a dozen other species. One day, one of his students asked him about the war. "Were you really there?" the boy asked. "Did you really fight on Vareth Prime?" Ryan looked at the curious faces around him. Human and alien, all mixed together, all learning side by side. This was what they had fought for. This was what Lily Porter had died for, even though she never knew it. "Yes," he said simply, "I was there. But the war is over now. What matters is what we build next." High Priest Zelkoth lived for another 50 years after the war. His punishment was exactly what Admiral Cole had promised. Not death, but service. He was sent to human colony worlds, where he spent his days building schools and hospitals and community centers. He worked with his own hands, doing labor that no Vorthani priest had done in 10,000 years. At first, he hated it. He hated the humans who watched him. He hated the children who stared at his strange face. He hated the work and the exhaustion and the loss of everything he had been. But years passed, and something changed inside him. He began to know the humans he worked with. He learned their names, their stories, their hopes. He watched their children grow up without fear. He saw kindness where he had once seen only enemies. One day, a little human girl approached him while he was working on a new playground. She looked at him with curious eyes, unafraid. "Are you the one from the story?" she asked. "The one who did the bad thing?" Zelkoth looked at her small face and felt something he had not felt in centuries. Shame. Real, deep, terrible shame. "Yes," he whispered. "I am." The girl tilted her head. "Do you feel sorry?" He knelt down so that his eyes were level with hers. "Every day," he said. "Every single day." The girl nodded, as if this was the answer she expected. Then she reached out and patted his arm gently. "It is okay," she said. "My mommy says we have to forgive people who feel sorry. Otherwise, we are not good people either." She ran off to play, leaving Zelkoth alone with his tears. Ambassador Daniel Porter never returned to public life. The man who had begged for his daughter's life could not face the galaxy that had taken her from him. He went back to Earth, to a small town where no one knew his name, and spent his remaining years teaching children about the stars. He told them about the wonders of space, the beauty of distant worlds, the amazing creatures that lived among the nebulae. But he always ended his lessons with the same warning. "The universe is full of wonders," he would say. "But it is also full of dangers. Not all of them come from monsters or black holes. Some of them come from beings who have forgotten that kindness matters. Some of them come from laws that care more about tradition than about right and wrong. When you go out there, remember this. Be careful. Be smart. But also, be kind. Because the universe needs more kindness." He died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 92, surrounded by students who had become friends. His last request was simple. Scatter his ashes in the same place where Lily's ashes had been scattered, so that father and daughter could be together again. Years passed. Then decades. Then centuries. The galaxy changed in ways that no one could have predicted. New species rose. Old hatreds faded. The Terran Accord grew into something larger and stronger than humanity had ever imagined. But the story of Lily Porter never faded. On Vareth Prime, in the garden where she had picked a flower and changed the course of history, a statue stood among the silver trees. It showed a little girl holding a single blue bloom, her face frozen in a moment of innocent wonder. Every year, on the anniversary of her death, beings from across the galaxy came to leave flowers at her feet. Humans and Vorthani and Kethrani and dozens of other species, all standing together, all remembering. One year, a young Vorthani girl asked her human teacher why everyone was so sad. The teacher was an old woman named Grace, who had lived through the war and the peace that followed. She knelt down beside the child and pointed at the statue. "Because a little girl picked a flower," she said softly. "And the universe learned that some species do not forgive easily. Some species do not forget, and some species, when you hurt their children, will burn everything you built to ash and start again." The Vorthani girl thought about this for a long moment. "But then they built something better. Right?" Grace smiled through her tears. "Yes, little one, they built something much better. And that is why we remember her. Not just because she died, but because her death made us all try harder to be good." The girl nodded and placed a small flower at the base of the statue. Then, she took Grace's hand and walked away, into a future that Lily Porter had made possible. The inscription on the statue glowed softly in the fading light of the alien sun. It would glow for 1,000 years more. A permanent reminder to the galaxy of what had been lost and what had been gained. The words were simple. Lily Porter. She only wanted to see something beautiful. And in the garden around her, dandelions grew wild among the sacred flowers, spreading their seeds to every corner of Vareth Prime, Earth's gift to the stars. Humanity's promise that they would never be forgotten. The story was over. But the lesson would last forever.